I'm with Mark Tennant, who's chairman of Honister Capital. It's the second largest IFA in the country. Second largest,
well, we think it is anyhow. It's in the first top three.
Okay,
it depends on how you measure
we'll
it.
claim the second largest IFA in the country. And Mark's been here all week. Mark, tell me, what themes do you think are emerging from
Well, I think one of the most interesting things, and it emerged in the distribution day, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, by the way. It was a great day. And that is the view that at last we're beginning to talk about the end customer. We're beginning to realise that we've had our head in the sand for I don't know how long, many years, and you're beginning to hear the beginnings of people thinking about the end customer, thinking about what the needs of the end customer are, instead of worrying about product. There's still that product bias in there. There's still an awful lot of people talking about product. We've got to get away from that, and for the first time in FundForum, we're just beginning to do that, which I think is great.
And do you think this will have a good effect long term for investors?
Well, if we follow it up, yes. Because at the end of the day, I mean, can you imagine Tesco doing the whole of their business plan without ever talking to a customer? I mean, Terry Leahy would have been out of a job years ago. And we do that. We absolutely do that. And I remember in the distribution day, Richard Garland straying onto the path of end customers. And I had to say to him, I said, Richard, you've got to be really careful. You're going to give the industry cardiac arrest if you go on talking about end customers. And, you know, go back in history, that's what it was like. I think there's also, quite rightly, a trend which has been going for some time now, but it's beginning to come to fruition, and that is, how do we deal with the ageing population? How do we deal with the fact that people are going to start to decumulate their wealth? And what are we going to do about that? I think that's beginning to happen. And I think the third thing, I'm afraid, yet again, regulation.
Yeah, and do you think, we just had a poll downstairs, people want to be more regulated. The European fund management industry has just voted.
Yes, I know.
To have more regulation, which is very surprising.
Well, I think they've got to be careful what they wish for.
Yes.
Well, no, I don't think it's not dumb, but what we want is better regulation. I'm not sure we want more of it. I think we want better regulation, and we want regulation that's not about tick boxes. And we saw the tick boxes in the banking industry, and we all know what happened then. And a lot of what regulators do is tick boxing, whether it's treating customers fairly or any of these good things in the FSA. It is all a question of going through the motions. And I think what regulators need to do is to stand back and look at the industry and say, look, are we doing this right for the customer? Rather than delving into the detail, and which to some extent they've done in RDR.
Are you optimistic going forward that the industry is improving?
Well, I think I'm optimistic that the industry is turning its head toward the customer, yes. I'm not optimistic about the market, just generally. I'm one of those unfortunate bears who feels that we're not through this yet anything like. I know that's not something that's shared.
Well,
but perhaps
we did a poll, and I think there is a mixture of views on that.
I mean, perhaps I've been around too long, but I was in the 70s. And there's just something I can't quite grab, and that is that you blow a hole through the financial system in a way in which we've never blown a hole before. You wipe out, according to the IMF, an entire world GDP, $50 trillion. And we get a recession that is only just about as bad as the 90s. On that basis, somebody's had a free lunch. And I don't happen to believe in free lunches.
Do you think that there's more to come?
Yes, because actually nothing's changed. If you think about it, the debt that was in the private sector in many countries is now in the public sector.
Yes.
The banks are still undercapitalized. And if we start to overcapitalize them or move them towards too big capital requirements now, we'll actually completely crucify any likelihood of coming out of this recession. And in order to get back to where the governments need to be, they need to make huge cuts. £112 billion needs to be taken out of the UK economy next year. That is huge, it's massive, 25% cut in every department except the National Health Service. That is an enormous cut. And that means making people redundant. And I can't see how you can make that number of people redundant, have a banking system that's still stuck, because the securitization market is still stuck, and not have a double dip. I don't know why the politicians don't say, look, okay, we've got to do this. It's going to be really painful. A bit like amputating an arm. You know, here's the leather. Get it between your teeth. This is going to hurt. And you do it quickly. What you don't do is allow the gangrene to develop. But you've got to tell the guy he's going to be hurt. You can't take the bone saw out and sort of go at him without telling him.
So do you think that the recent budget wasn't very full of shock and awe that they were predicting?
I think it was as full, to be fair, to be political for a moment, I think it was as full of shock and awe as it could be. If I was them, I would be warning of a double dip. I wouldn't be waiting for it to happen and then be blamed for it. Because I think it's inevitable. And that means, I mean, we've all seen what happened to markets yesterday and what's happened to them today, but not great
Challenges
yesterday.
ahead.
Yeah, I think so.